Welcome. Today I want to talk about ADHD and our relationship with food. If you have ADHD, this is complicated for you. You would say you have a complicated relationship with food. You're not alone. There are a dozen reasons I'll talk about today. They are not the only reasons that impact eating and nourishing ourselves, our relationship with food when we have ADHD or can. And so this is just a dozen that I've found in my coaching work, personally, things that I've looked at, the research. And so you're not alone if this is true for you. And we're going to go into some of the why. I do offer a coaching program specifically for this topic, eating with ease for people with ADHD, the no shame approach to support some of the things we're going to talk about today that are hard. So if you want more information about that, click the link down below. You'll get more information. Now, what this chat is not going to be is a substitute for therapy. If you struggle in this area and you need more support, especially if you're dealing with an eating disorder, I'd encourage you to find the right therapeutic support for that, because it certainly is not a substitute for that. This will not be that, but it is a good overview of a lot of ADHD factors that impact food, our ease with food, our relationship with food. Let's jump into some of these reasons why. Number one is interoception. ADHD impacts interoception. Many people with ADHD have altered interoception. What is that? It is that internal register of what's going on in our body. So things like hunger and fullness, our breathing rate, our temperature, all of this is our interoceptive system. And it's impacted with ADHD. Many people with ADHD have a hard time noticing things in their bodies. Sometimes even with emotional regulation, we're asking somebody to identify what an emotion feels like in your body, like whether you're having a tight throat or a fluttery stomach or your heart rate's racing. And so struggling with this internal knowing and feeling and perception with your body can complicate your relationship with food, specifically hunger and fullness. They're hard to tune into when this is hard for you. Also, satisfaction. If you're not getting a lot of the sensory aspect of food, it's not registering, you're missing out on a lot of satisfaction from food that can help you feel more satisfied. Number two is medication. This also ties into noticing hunger and fullness. One of the main types of medications that is used to manage ADHD is stimulant medication, which suppresses appetite for many people. And so when you have a suppressed appetite, it is turning down the dial on all of the hunger signals that you might get in the day that trigger, hey, I need to get something to eat. It's time to eat food. And so if you have medications suppressing those signals, well, then you have less information again about your hunger throughout the day that helps kind of guide you on when to eat. People have an experience also of medications wearing off at night. They haven't been hungry all day. They haven't had nutrients all day and fuel all day. And suddenly at night, they are starving. They're going to go for whatever is really quick and easy because they're too hungry for making decisions and thinking about food and planning food. This can really set us up for kind of a binge starve cycle, which is a really rough cycle that happens when we're not able to register hunger and fullness and those internal signals. Number three reason that also kind of has to do with this noticing is attention regulation. That's kind of the heart of what's tough with ADHD. And what that can look like for a lot of people, myself included, is I get really hyper-focused on something, really tune into it, and nothing else exists. So not drinking water, going to the bathroom, not eating, not noticing any of that stuff going on because I'm so in tune and focused on what I'm doing. And so for the same reasons as that impacted interoception or our suppressed appetite with medication has the same impact. You could be ignoring your needs for so long until they're screaming at you till you have a headache and you feel foggy and you are completely dehydrated. You're feeling horrible at 4 or 5 o'clock because you have been so not tuned in to your body, whether it's interoception or medication. So we end up not getting food when we need it, and then maybe getting more food than we need at not like the optimal time of the day for us. Number four is emotional regulation. When we're talking about regulation, we talk about regulating attention, but also regulating emotions. And many people with ADHD have a hard time kind of surfing big emotion. And food is a tool to help handle big emotions. And there could be a lot of shame about this, but when you think of maybe some of your earliest experiences with comforting, like go back to babyhood, right? The one thing that you have sometimes is the sensory experience of food, of eating. And so it is really, really common for people who don't have access to other tools to really lean on food as a regulator of emotions. And they lean on it because it works. It helps manage that emotion. So I like to kind of decrease shame around that. If it's a tool that works for you, You want to know why it works for you. You want to substitute it out with something else. That's what we focus on, is adding more tools. So if this is you and you use food to manage emotions, it's a really understandable thing. And part of supporting yourself and helping yourself have a less complicated relationship with food is giving yourself other tools for doing that. And that's complex, but there are plenty of resources that you can tap into that can help you do that. Number 5 reason that impacts our relationship with food is sensory differences. Now, this impacts our relationship with food in several ways. One factor is that people who maybe are very sensitive to different textures and kind of aversive to certain textures, it can limit the amount of foods that they want to eat or they're going to feel comfortable eating. So that's a way that it makes food maybe a little more complicated, is limiting choices. Another factor that I talk about in some of my sensory workshops is that the input from eating is a sensory experience. And it is also a regulating experience. When I'm looking at regulating nervous system, one of the sensory strategies that I love to use and love to teach people how to use is using proprioceptive input. That's just a really kind of a fancy way of saying input to your muscles and joints. So jumping, running, any input where you're getting a lot into those muscles and joint helps your nervous system regulate, helps you kind of come down. If you're too elevated, helps you come up if you're feeling kind of sluggy. So that sensory experience of eating for people can often be a regulator. When you look at that muscle and joint input, your jaw is a joint surrounded by muscle. So this is a reasonable method for getting sensory input that helps regulate your nervous system. So we're talking about the emotional regulation. Even your energy level regulation can be impacted with sensory input. And eating can provide that. So if you're feeling really sluggy and tired and your instinct is to grab food and to get like some of this work going in your jaw, it's not a bad instinct. You probably want more in your toolbox than that. But that is a reasonable and kind of predictable thing that we often do when we're trying to regulate our activity level and our focus, is try to get sensory input to do that. So another reason is dopamine seeking. Many people with ADHD experience this. We have a difference here in the system, in our dopamine system. And so we are often on the hunt for these high reward eating experiences or any kind of experiences that give us this little surge of dopamine, this reward neurotransmitter. And so when you find yourself really craving these high reward foods like sugars and fats and carbs and fun food, these highly palatable foods, it could be because you are seeking that kind of input to get that really quick boost of dopamine to your system. So eating for stimulation, eating for that kind of bump can impact our relationship with food. Impulsivity. Everybody has impulses, especially around food, right? We eat with our eyes. Our visual experience of food triggers a lot of our cravings and even behaviors around food. If you struggle with impulsivity, you might lack this period of time in between that impulse and taking action. And that period of time for a lot of people is a time where they check in with their bodies. Am I hungry? Am I full? What do I really need right now? How is what I'm going to eat impact me like in an hour? What is it going to do to my energy? Is this the choice I want to make? If you're struggling with impulsivity, that little window of time might be like a lot smaller or might not exist at all. If you're struggling with that, it's very likely to impact your food choices and your overall relationship with food. Sleep. Sleep is a huge issue for many people with ADHD. Hard time with sleep routines, hard time falling asleep, hard time staying asleep. Many people have a delayed sleep onset, so none of this is happening until kind of a lot later for them. So ADHD's impact on sleep and getting adequate sleep can absolutely kind of have this domino effect in how we deal with food. There's a hormonal domino effect. When you don't get adequate sleep, there are hormones that are regulating your hunger and your satiety, your satisfaction with food, your feeling that you've had enough. And those hormones go in the opposite direction that we would want them. You're hungrier because of ghrelin, a hormone that regulates your appetite. You are less satisfied because there's a decrease in this hormone leptin that regulates your satisfaction. And cortisol also bumps up your appetite. It stimulates that. So when you're not sleeping, all of these things are working against maybe what your body actually needs. These hormones can directly impact your experience of being hungry and full and impact your relationship with food. Not to mention that when we're really exhausted, it's hard to make any really intentional decisions, any good decisions for our future selves, because we don't have the resources. Nothing good happens when you're sleep deprived when it comes to decision making. That gets more complicated, more challenging to do. Executive functioning skills, this is one of the ones I probably should have talked about first. It's really the focus of a lot of my coaching. When we're looking at food, there is so much executive functioning skill demand when it just comes to dealing with food, grocery shopping, meal planning, cooking food, cleaning up, knowing what's in your refrigerator, what you have to use, remembering those things, dealing with time and when to eat and planning when to eat and being aware of all of that is such a heavy executive functioning skill demand. When I was younger, not recommending this, but I went on a really extended fast. I was in college. I was only feeding myself. And I was shocked at how much time I had when I was just not dealing with any of it. I wasn't cooking. I wasn't washing dishes. I wasn't grocery shopping. And it was crazy how much time, effort, energy that freed up. Not recommending to do that for executive functioning skills, but it's just something we might not really recognize day to day, that this is a huge cost of energy for us. And if these are hard skills for you, it's even more difficult. So there's a lot that is involved in just having food choices. No matter what's a typical diet for you, in order to have any decisions with food, you need to have done all these things ahead of time to kind of prepare to have those options. So when those are hard for us, we don't have as many options around food. We feel exhausted by dealing with food. We feel overwhelmed. So executive functioning demand in just staying nourished in our relationship with food is big. And it can be a big stumbling block for people in having the kind of relationship with food they want. I want to talk about glucose spikes because of a lot of the factors that I've been talking about already. It is a really common pattern for people with ADHD to have these really big peaks and valleys in their blood glucose because they're not eating regularly. When they are eating, they're seeking out really high dopamine, high sugar, high carb kind of foods. They are maybe struggling with time management and having a hard time just having the foods available that level out their blood sugar. There's so many reasons that contribute, but what happens is that they have a lot of these peaks and valleys. So that can be really hard functionally. It can be hard on your health. It can be hard functionally, though. Hard to think and have reliable energy when we're always kind of responding to these spikes and these crashes. So leveling out that level is usually a good thing for everyone, right? My approach with doing that is not to eliminate foods and not to be like overly legalistic about foods, but to approach adding things in to my diet and my eating that helps level that out so I'm not spiking so much. Because with those spikes, it's harder to focus. You can feel shaky, you can feel crabby and foggy. It is harder to function. You don't feel great when you're having a lot of those spikes and dips in your blood sugar. Black and white thinking. So black and white thinking is never our friend. It's always jams us up. I just use a very black and white approach to that, right? Black and white thinking can really jam us up in everything. When I'm looking at any other coaching topic that somebody brings to our sessions, black and white thinking it's not helpful. It ends up really getting in the way of making meaningful changes. It is no different when it comes to your relationship with food. A lot of diets and eating plans and approaches require this really, really extreme adherence to only this way, and this is good and this is bad. There's no shades of gray. There's no room to be human. There's no room to experiment. And so this kind of thinking can make us swing back and forth in the way we treat our bodies, the way we handle food. We're all in, we're all out, but we're not necessarily connected to what our body needs, able to adjust that because we're going from one extreme to the other. But black and white thinking is a real vulnerability when it comes to eating disorders because eating disorders love living in black and white land where it's got to be 100% perfect or you're not okay. And so when we're looking at some of the factors with ADHD, many people do struggle with this black and white thinking. And it kind of ignores a lot of your bio-individuality, the fact that each body has some different things that are true that could be changing. What is true for my body right now may not be true for it in 10 years. There are different things that I need right now. There's approaches that work better for me. And so not having that flexibility can really impact us when it comes to having ease around food, self-trust around how we're relating to food, how we're feeding ourselves. So black and white thinking is another factor when it comes to not having ease with food, not having food peace. And the last one that I want to talk about is rejection sensitivity. With ADHD, many people have this experience of rejection sensitivity. If you're not familiar with that, it's really heightened, big emotional impact when we are rejected or even when we think we're being rejected. This is almost a physical pain for people, and it's so intense. And so, because of this sensitivity rejection, it creates more vulnerability when it comes to things that are tricky culturally, like body standards, pressures for bodies to look a certain way, diet culture, back to that black and white thinking. This is good, this is bad. When we are more sensitive to rejection, we're more vulnerable to these other things that can make our relationship with food and eating and nourishing ourselves and our bodies tough. So dealing with rejection sensitivity is hard in many ways, but it absolutely shows up in many of our relationships with food, with diet culture, with body image. All of this can really come together to make it tricky and tough. So these 12 factors, they're not all there is. Obviously, there are more things for all of us. We're complex people. We're not all cookie cutter. There are many things that impact our relationship with food with or without ADHD. If you have ADHD and you want more support with some of these, I do offer groups, coaching groups that focus specifically on this. I have a group coaching program called Eating with Ease, and it is full of support for people with ADHD who want to improve their relationship with food and build self-trust in that area. If you want more information about that group, it's linked in the notes below. So if this is tricky for you, I want to encourage you to find more support. For some people, it's going to be working with a therapist or a support group. It may be a coaching group, but whatever it is, you don't have to go at it alone. Sometimes there's a shame that where you think you're the only person that deals with this. You could not be further from the truth. If this is a hard area for you, I encourage you to plug into the support that you need to be able to build a better relationship with your body, with food, and with your brain. So that is it for today. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.